This is the session on user roles and permissions, and it's the default user roles and permissions. So we have um, basically 4 different types of users that you can have in there. You got your students, your tutors, instructors, and system users or admins, basically is that 4th group. And we're going to go through and see what each of those roles has as far as permissions and what they can do, how that looks in the system. We're also going to talk about some special permissions that you can give each role. Okay, and we're going to start off here with the student view. So for our students, it's very limited by default what they can see. Everything's going to be pre-filtered on them, so they're not going to see anything else that's not pertaining to them specifically. So they'll be able to see their own appointments. They'll be able to create their own appointments if you allow it, and they'll be able to see some reports specifically on their information. Next, we have the tutors view. Now, you might have some tutors that have access to more things if you've been using the software for a while. And it's because we do have some special permissions that you can give the tutors. But by default, if they are just a regular tutor, they're going to have access to the Manage Center screen and Session Log screen. And those are going to be pre-filtered by that tutor as well. So they're not going to be able to see every session unless you allow it with those special permissions. And then for appointments, I believe they can see only their appointments at first unless you allow them to see everyone's. And they'll be able to make an appointment though for any student. So so they can make their own appointments. Then we'll have reports, and those are pre-filtered by that tutor automatically. And they do have access to view my schedule. Now they could also have access through special permissions to create their schedule, but those are the defaults that they'll have access to. Okay, and then the next role, and this may or may not be used by your school, depends on if you import instructors or professors in there, but it can be helpful. If you do have those group being added to your system, they can conduct class attendance if you allow that. Usually for supplemental instruction, they can create referrals to the centers. So if a student needs to be referred over, maybe they have bad grades, maybe it's because they're not really attending the sessions like they should. There could be a whole host of reasons. You basically would create a referral form. They would fill it out and refer those students over, so they'll have access to that. They can only make referrals though for students that are in their classes. Then we have reports. This is also going to be pre-filtered on that particular instructor. So if they don't have access to the report, it's because they're not considered an instructor of that class. So it should only show when students visit that are in their classes. Okay. Now this is the 4th one. I guess the number didn't change, but the system user role. Now, the reason why we really didn't want to go into this one too much is because this is your full admin role. It could be, you know, a front desk worker that only has access to like 1 or 2 things. So they're very vastly different depending on how you customize like the scope and permissions they have. And as you can see, there's like a long list of permissions that they could have. So, you know, everything in there is basically, you know, a different type of user than at that point by the, you know, when you check a different box. I think there's like 48 different permissions now that we're up to. Okay, and then this goes to the special permissions that we have by role. So where you would access these to give these special permissions to this users is actually going to be all in the same place for all the different default user types. So like your students, your tutors, and instructors. basically if you go to administration control panel, user accounts, and then the access restrictions heading, you're going to see there's they aren't actually labeled by group, but you'll see these first two options at the top, and it'll say students can access session log screen, or students can access the appointment wizard. So each of these are going to give that student role a little more access in the system. By default, they can't see the logs, excuse me, the session logs screen, but they can pull a report of their logs from when they attended the center. So that would be something extra that you could give them so that they could actually just view it without having to print a report. And it will still be filtered on that student. So when you give these things, they still um, are treated as though they're students, so they're not going to get more access than they had. Um, and this appointment wizards, this is the old appointment wizard. So if you wanted them to also have access to that, you could give them access to that. So again, now we're looking at the tutor permissions, and these are in that same location. And I'm actually going to go in the system after these slides to show you exactly where that is. But this is the next section, and it's not titled tutors or anything like that. But in there, you're going to start seeing these permissions, so they can edit their own schedule. They could view all the sessions instead of just their own. So basically, we're giving that tutor role a little more permission without having to make them an admin of some sort. So just by being a tutor, you're going to have these extra permission, special permissions, I guess you could say. So we got other things like they can edit session comments. You can even limit how long, like at the bottom here, it says the max hours that they can edit the comments. So like after, 48 hours, let's say they can't make any changes to that comment. They can always add a new comment, but they can't make changes or something like that. And there's just a bunch of different things. So I would explore these, like some of these are sign in and sign out students. This is a good one if you do a lot of remote work. You have online tutors is where they can sign themselves in and out. So if you have them clock in and out for the day, um, there's an option there where basically it would allow them to click on their name and sign in at the beginning of the day and click on their name and sign out at the end of the day. And then the instructors even have a few extra things. So like I said, the class attendance isn't there unless you actually give them this checkbox here where it says they can edit the class attendance. But you can also allow them to view the assessment reports in addition to their other report that they can view automatically. And just keep in mind that we're still filtering them by the instructor. So they're not going to see everyone's information like all the other classes and stuff like that. So these are still considering the role of the person and just giving them extra access to like a new report, for instance.
One thing I want to point out, Nick, is if for those of you who either were at last week's session or viewed the recording of Frances Whaley's presentation, she was from Kishwaukee College, they use assessment reports in this way where they allow instructors to receive those assessment reports based on their students who have come to visit their center. So if you want to learn more about how a school is actually using this feature, I would definitely go back and watch that. That's going to be, we just posted that on our website, on our blog.
And the assessment reports, just if you're not familiar, it's what the tutors are filling out after the session. So you kind of have, their information being shared with with their instructor, so that they kind of see, from the tutor's perspective, what's happening. And then we do have a few special permissions that you're going to give to all users. So in that list, you'll see one that says non-administrators can edit their own email address. This is good if you don't want the users to edit their own emails. I think by default they can. So if you didn't want them to do this, you would uncheck this option. And the reason why is maybe you want them to use their school email, for instance. So if you didn't want them to do that, you would you can uncheck this option so they can't make that change. Another thing is that you can have the ID show up in different areas of the system. So this would, give like tutors maybe the ability to see the student's ID, instructors as well throughout the system. So if you don't want that really displayed on the screen, now you could have it where um, maybe it shows up in the reports that they're getting. Um, and not have it displayed on the screens. But this is basically an option and it affects all the users. So, and before we get to the end here, I just wanted to go ahead and actually take you through that. I've got way too many screens and things open, sorry. Okay, and I'm just gonna pull up my demo account. And I'm gonna go ahead and log in. So first I'm gonna log in as the admin, just so I can show you where some of those special permissions are. So once I log in, I'm gonna go to Administration Control Panel and the User Account Settings. And if you look on the left side, you can actually click on it. It says Access Restriction. So this is where all those settings that I was just talking about, all the special permissions you can give those roles. And like I said, they're not exactly in any particular order in a way. We have like some student permissions and there's one that applies to all. But if you read the setting, it should say like applies to students, tutors, you should be able to see that. And it does use your terminology. Like for instance, I've used the word professors for instructors. So I've got allow professors to access the session assessment reports. So it's using that terminology for me. And if we look at, I've got a few user accounts here that I'll log in as. So this person's just a student. I think I should be able to log in as this person. Log out. There we go. All right, and so this is the student view. So you can see there's not a whole lot that they have access to. They can see if they have any upcoming appointments. They can create a new appointment, or they can view all their appointments, and we have it on the menu as well as in the home page here. Because I did allow them to see the session logs, they can also click on that and you can see that it is that users logs only, because otherwise they'd see a bunch of different logs in here. And then of course pull some reports, but if you notice, they all say my reports because it's, specific to those users. Let me log out of that user. And I have a test tutor that I can log in as now. Okay. And actually, I gave this one a few extra permissions. Let me find one that doesn't have. Um, okay, they have permissions too. One way to tell, and I could tell automatically when I come into these, that this person has extra permissions is I see automatically here like an administration section. So if you see that, it's kind of like a dead giveaway because these are going to be some extra things they're going to have. So if we were to ignore those though, and go to some of the things like center attendance. Actually, I don't know if I can ignore some of them because it will show some things here. Let me log out of this user. Okay, here's a good example, I guess. They're just a tutor on the roles here. Okay, that's better. Okay, so I've got some center attendance things I can do, like I can manage the center. If there's any students waiting, I could sign them in off the waiting line. I can see who's signed in, who's signed out recently. So everything on the managed center, I got the session logs. Now I did give them the ability to create logs, so they may not have this button if you didn't give that like special permission to them. And you can see here that I actually can see all the logs with with the students, um, as well as the ones that with other tutors. So you know, if you give them the ability to do that, it's actually kind of nice because the tutor can then um, just look up the student's name or ID and you know, see all the appointments, even if it was with maybe another tutor or something like that. So that is one of the special permissions that is nice to give. Um, of course, they can create new appointments for all students and view all their appointments. They don't have any right now. And then there's reports, but it's only on their tutoring activity. And that's it, I think. Like I said, they can view their schedule unless you give them the ability to edit their schedule, which I think I did actually give them that ability. So let's see if I wanted to add some Saturday hours. Yeah, they can do that. Um, and then this is where they would sign in and sign out remotely if you give them that option. But these are special permissions, so you don't automatically have these unless you give those to your tutors. So. And last but not least here, we're gonna log in as I'm gonna go back in as an admin just to find them, but I'm gonna grab me a um, instructor account. Okay, so as you can see in here, I am actually allowing them to take attendance. So if they had any kind of SI classes that they were helping in the center, like supplemental instruction that they were doing, they could select the class and then mark people present, absent, tardy for that. There's the referral section. They would just click the new referral here and choose from the different referrals. So tutoring could have a different one than advising, and then whatever my center is here. But each center basically can customize their own referral. And then the reports. And this one I actually gave access to those assessment reports. So you can see that there's 3 different reports as well that are from the center. And these should be pre-filtered on just their students, so they don't have to worry about, oh, am I, you know, viewing everybody's data or is it just mine? So, and that's pretty much it. So, like I said, the system users, I didn't really want to go into one of their accounts because it could be different depending on all the different permissions. But you know, as a full admin, you have a ton of different areas here. So, and I
Thank you,
think that's
Nick.
it.
Thanks,
Yep.
Nick.